Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Live from Redfearn's Bar on Thursday, 23rd of April. For the last couple of interviews, we've been going out live on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel. So welcome to any live first-time viewers coming through from those directions. Just as a reminder, because we haven't mentioned this since the first episode we did, this series of interviews have been brought to you by Barnsley FC Supporters Trust. And for those that are not aware, Redfearn's Bar is the volunteer-run supporters bar now located in the fan zone on a match day just behind the East Stand. After we had 5 seasons inside the Ozone Bar. So thanks to the amazing fans that have visited over those seasons. We've managed to raise over £10,000 for charities and supported lots of fan-focused initiatives. So when we get back to normal, all being well, fingers crossed, look for that giant van pouring Acorn and Brewdog beers and make a point of stopping by before that next game at Oakwell. Anyway, on to this evening. We're at session number 7 now, and we're joined by a former Reds captain, someone who protected our goal for over 200 games, would you believe? A winner of the FA Cup Player of the Year award, which just happened to also be his Barnsley debut at Anfield. So good evening, Luke.
Good evening, Ben. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Huge appreciation from the Trust for agreeing to give us your time tonight.
No worries. It's good to do something for Barnsley. Like I just said to you before, it's been so long. And obviously through these difficult times, people have completed Netflix and, they might want to watch something like this. I don't know.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Before we start with the questions, just a bit of a admission from myself. So my favourite 3 goalkeepers of all time are David Watson, Peter Schmeichel and yourself. So I'll try and keep myself in check for the next hour.
Well, Peter Schmeichel was my favourite goalie, so we've got something in common. There's been some terrific keepers play for Barnsley, so I'm proud to be among them.
Perfect. So as our first guest who's still playing, how are you coping with the lockdown? Are you getting instructions from both Forest and Millwall? Because you're kind of in that middle ground of being on loan at one club but having a parent club as well.
No, it doesn't really work like that. Once you're on loan, you are on loan entirely. So I don't really have any contact with Nottingham Forest anymore, even before the lockdown or anything like that. Once you're on loan to a club, unless you're a young player and you kind of, getting experience and things like that, you don't really have contact with your parent club. So, we've been sent like assignments to do in terms of running on Strava app. I don't know if you're familiar with that. We use the Zoom app to do circuits, mini weight sessions, and they've been good. Mill's a really, really good club at the moment. I've been surprised at how well run it is. Their attention to detail is fantastic, and they'll say themselves we're not the highest paid players in the league by a long way, but you know what, they're really, really solid foundations at the moment, and I've been really impressed since I've been there.
So we've still got no idea what's going to happen with the current season, and reports today are saying that UEFA won't let teams play next season in Europe if there's not a finish somehow. What's the general feeling amongst you and your teammates about what should happen or what will happen?
Well, our gaffer, Gary Rowett, he sends us like video messages probably every week or so. I'm on that many group chats, to be honest. It's too many, it's ridiculous. But no, he seems confident that we're going to be back. I think it's 16th of May. That's the time at the moment, but that could all change. I think it's clear to say, the top scientists, the cleverest people in the world don't know when the world's going to be up and running again. So, the EFL have got no idea, no disrespect to them. And then filter that down to the clubs. They haven't got any idea. Nobody has.
So let's get started on your football career then. So your first team football career started at a really young age. You made your Peterborough debut at 17 after a couple of trial games with Manchester United. How daunting was that, being between the sticks at your local team at just 17?
That was my first year apprentice as a YTS or a scholarship, is I don't know what they call it now. I've been playing under 19 football most of the season. I played reserve games, and but like you said, I've been to United on a month loan, and then the last 2 games of the season, Barry Fry just threw me in with zero warning. He just said, look, you're playing. I think Peterborough were sort of mid-table and we couldn't go up or down, so I think they wanted to try some young players out, and I weren't really up to speed with it at the time, but looking back now, they were looking to sell me, so they wanted to get the top price. So it was the first crazy story of my whole career. It was we had an under-19 game on the Saturday, true story this, and I think at 9 o'clock in the morning, the first team bus pulled up outside my digs, And one of the first team players knocked on my Diggs door and said, "What are you doing? You're with the first team today." And nobody had told me. And I think Barry done that on purpose just to, avoid any nerves as a 17-year-old. And, I got changed in 5 minutes, jumped on the first team bus. He told me that I'm going to be playing at Reading, which was going to be a full house because they needed to win to go up. And then he already said, "Look, your mum and dad know, and, they're going to be at the game, your nan and granddad too." So that was great. And, played at Reading. We drew 2-2, spoiled the party. And, I think my price tag went up in 90 minutes straight away. So it's a genius move from Barry Fry.
And did you have any inclination at that point, playing in those games for Peterborough, that a move to United was going to happen, or was it still just a distinct possibility?
Well, as I said, I'd been there for a month and I'd done another week because I was a professional. They signed me on my birthday. So I actually on loan, which is strange, going on loan to Manchester United as a 17-year-old, but that was the way they had to do it. And yeah, I knew. I mean, I went to Charlton as well for a week. I did 7 days there. But I knew that they were trying to sell me, and he just wanted the right money. He wanted $500,000. And in the end, it was sort of up to me which one I wanted to go to, because then we played a game against Arsenal, against their first team behind closed doors. And, they were trying to sell me to the highest bidder, really. So I knew it was going on, but because I was a Man U fan as a boy, Barry knew that. Barry was a Man U fan, and he took me himself the first time in his own car. And, there was, once they'd agreed the price tag, I was always going to be a Manchester United player.
And when that deal went through, it was for £500,000, potentially rising to over 2 million. Did you ever pinch yourself as a teenager thinking, Alex Ferguson's just paid £500,000 for me?
Yeah, it was mental, Ben. Absolutely mental. I mean, I left school, gone to be a scholarship player, and played in the first team and then got sold to Manchester United within the first season. So it was absolutely mental. And as a child, my dream was to be signed by Man U. I always thought 21, 22, and then it literally happened in 10 months. So, everything sort of changed. And because I've been at Peterborough United's academy since I was 9, I've been there for 8, 9 years. It was a big change for me. And, Ferguson wanted me to win the FA Youth Cup. He says, "Right, I want to bring you in and you'd learn," and blah, blah, blah. And he says, "First thing, I want you to win the FA Youth Cup." So there's your pressure. They haven't won it in about 10 years. I was thinking, Jesus, like this guy, as soon as I'd signed the papers, he'd said, "Look, you've got to win the FA Youth Cup in your first year." So, there was your pressure.
No pressure. What was Sir Alex like, and who else at Man United helped you settle in?
He was brilliant. Like looking back, I played a lot for the 19s in the first year. Obviously, the Youth Cup, we played. I played in that team, and I travelled with the first team a lot. I made a few bench spots, but he was brilliant. His attention to detail was so good. He knew everybody's name. When me and my dad went up the second time to sign, he greeted my dad as Gordon. He knew my dad's name, and I always remember that because I remember thinking my dad watched Man U from a young boy. He was from Manchester, snuck in. He was Old Trafford, and over the years taught me to be a Man U fan like you do. And then we stayed up watching all the games over the years, and this great manager had us in his office, and he made a point of whether he remembers things like that or he writes it down. I do not know, but to remember a 17-year-old kid who's not going to go in the first team, he's going to be nowhere near it to begin with, to remember his dad's name is like gold dust, absolute business gold dust, and I'll never forget that.
It's interesting because Nardiello told us a couple of weeks ago exactly the same, how he focused on looking after his parents first and foremost and just built that rapport with them straight away.
Yeah,
so that's really interesting to hear.
He was something special. I mean, he worked so hard, and there's no surprise that he looked so tired all the time because he was a hard-working guy. And when I went there, he was obviously he's in the last 10 years of his career, but he was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
And that pecking order at Man United was pretty formidable when you were there. But you had some good action first with the first team squad, especially on pre-season tours around the world. Which goalkeeper did you learn the most from while you were at Old Trafford?
Well, when I first went there, Barthez had just signed, and he'd obviously won the World Cup and things like that. And he was class, but probably went for a bit of a tough time. I think the best I saw was Van der Sar. Van der Sar was not only just a really good goalkeeper. I mean, a world-class goalkeeper. He was the reason I thought to myself, I realised I wasn't good enough to play for Man U when I saw him. I think, like I had to be realistic in my 20s, and I wanted to get my career started. And Van der Sar thought, Man United need a world-class goalkeeper, not a brilliant goalkeeper, not great. They need a world-class goalie, and there's only about five world-class goalies playing at one time. Do you know what I mean? And for me to be that, I realised that Van der Sar was head and shoulders above myself. So, but he was brilliant, really nice guy, spoke good English, helped me, helped a lot of the young lads or the young goalkeepers. And even when I've seen him since, he's been nothing but pleasant and polite, and somebody I really learned a lot from.
Yeah, he was a fantastic keeper. So you had some loan spells at Coventry before a permanent move to West Brom, and then you ended up at Oakwell before that famous FA Cup game at Anfield. Can you talk us through that transfer from the first second it was on your radar to when it was completed?
Right, okay. So I must have told this story so many times, but it's a Wednesday night, I think. Dan Ashworth calls me, who is the West Brom director of football, that's right. And Dan Ashworth, I don't know if you know that name, he was Hodgson's director of football for England. I think he ended up being the highest paid director of football of all time, I think, but certainly in England. So he's just left the FA, he's at Brighton now. But he called me, he said, Luke, got some good news. Barnsley want to take you on loan, but it's just for a month. So I was like, not turning my nose up, but I was like, right, okay. And he says, but the first game is Liverpool away on Saturday. So I was like, brilliant. This is fantastic. This is, because I was going through a bad time at the point, and, I won't lie, I started to doubt myself a bit. I was kind of, I played a season at Coventry, but then I'd kind of had 2 seasons without playing. I'd left Man U to go to West Brom, and it had not worked out. Brian Robson got the sack, and everything seemed to be going against me. And when that happens, I always kind of blame myself. I really do. I always think, it must be me, not bad luck. It must be me. And I was thinking maybe I have to drop down, and he said that, and I said, brilliant. Like I'd love to do that. He says, look, go and play, meet up with them tomorrow, and go and do your best. So I went down the next day. Sorry, I went down that night. I literally put a bag together, went down that night. I think I had to ring West Brom to get the training ground open to get my gloves and boots. Went to Barnsley that night. They put me in a hotel. I trained on the Thursday. Then on the Friday, I think, looking back, we trained at Everton's training ground. And so obviously, I trained at Everton's training ground on the Friday, and then stayed in the room the night before with Stephen Foster. And the bit, people always say, was I making it up? I was asking Fozzie at the time. I was saying, look, what are the lads' names? Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't really know the lads' names, and I'm crap with footballers even to this day, but with first names. But I thought, if I'm playing, I at least need to know the back four. I need to know what they need to be called. I remember writing it down. The bit of paper that you get given at the side of your bed in the hotel room.
Yeah.
I was writing it down there. So I was drawing the back four. I said, look, what's the team probably going to be, and things like that. So I was kind of learning that, and obviously it came to the game. And I remember Simon Davies saying to me, look, you're here for a month. He says, go and enjoy it. Nothing to lose. He says, if we win or we get a good result or play well, then obviously I'll keep you in, but it's up to you. And I think obviously because I think we had God Jesus, what's his name, from Liverpool, Fulham. Who was the goalkeeper when I came in? This is horrible. Trigger, they call him Trigger, don't they? From Bonus. His nickname is Bonus from Liverpool. Turner. Is it Turner? No, not Turner.
Not Turnbull,
No. This is, and I always speak, so I always say hello. Anyway, we'll come back to that. Shall we?
Yeah, because I got stumped on something the other day on one of these, because I'm so focused on your career, I forget everything else. Yeah,
it'll come to me, because I had breakfast with him the Monday morning. But anyway, so yeah, he says, look, come in. If you do well, obviously I'll keep you in the team for the month and things like that. So I was like, right, okay. And then, we got to the game. I was very, very nervous. I remember in the hotel, it always sticks out in the hotel. I think Benitez stayed in our hotel, and we saw him in the reception bit early in the morning. something like that. And then we had a team meeting at the hotel, really, really nervous. Again, didn't really speak to the lad much because, you know, you're on the bus and it's a big game for them as well. They all knew each other. And then, yeah, I just went into it thinking, I honestly thought, well, if I can keep this at 3-0 and make a few good saves, that'll be brilliant. But anything over that, it's just a drumming, and he won't keep you in the team. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, we just kind of got on with it, and it was a bit of a blur, but
I was going to say, how much can you remember from the game, and how did it feel when the whistle went?
Well, I remember my mum and dad coming to the game. My mate Lloyd, one of my good friends, Lloyd Jones, he's a big Liverpool fan. I only know one Liverpool fan, it's Lloyd, and he was going to the game. So obviously he was buzzing that I was playing, and a couple of my other friends were there. And then the game started, and I don't know, it's funny because when they say, oh, you have to train hard because when it comes to matches, things will come second nature. It was the first time I'd experienced that, because all of a sudden I was nervous. I was like in the zone, but I weren't thinking outside of the game at all. And it was just kind of, my training just came to light, and that was it. Like, it got me through the first 20, 30 minutes. And then I realized where I was. And then, you know, I kind of felt myself into the game more, but I was just so focused. I was, like I said, I was nervous, I think the whole game, but started to make saves and started to feel more comfortable, conceded a goal. But yeah, I think I made a save just before half time. I remember thinking, you know, at least that's just 1-0, and, you know, we're in the game. Let's crack on. And then, you know, got the equaliser. And then I think I made a few saves in the second half, which didn't really get noticed. They never really get shown. But I held a few balls and I caught a few things. And I remember, and there was one right near the end, of deflection. And I just remember thinking, flipping hell, I am in the zone. I don't know how many times I've saved the ball today, but it feels like it's training. Do you know what I mean? I felt like the Matrix a little bit, as if things were just happening without me actually trying, if that makes sense. It's dead strange to explain. And then when we were near the end, it was 1-0. I was thinking, just get this replay. Do you know what I mean? Get this replay. Surely they'll play me. Like, you know, can we hold on? And for us to get the goal, it was just mental, absolutely mental, out of body experience. You know, I felt light as a feather. I slid on my knees, which I never do, never done since, never done before. Just completely light as a feather. And then the whistle goes, and it's just the first time you feel excitement like you've never ever felt before. I didn't really celebrate, because I didn't really know the lads. Hug them and, like, you know, like I would do if I was in a team. That was the weird thing. It was like amazed. And I remember the sun was in. No, the fans behind me just going mental, like they were celebrating the goal, but they're just celebrating the win, and rightly so, because it was just class. It was just unbelievable. More I think talk about it now when I say in detail, it's like, you know, the whole experience, the whole scenario was just surreal. Just surreal.
One of my questions was going to be, how hard is it to celebrate that euphoria moment when you've only met the players 48 hours before, when you don't know their names?
No, exactly. That was always, you know, in the back of well, not in the back of my mind, but that was just something natural for me. I don't know why I just couldn't celebrate. I never knew how to celebrate, and I certainly didn't think about celebrating before the game. So sometimes you think, oh, if we win this, I'm going to be flipping, you know, getting the crowd up. And it was just, I didn't know what to do. So I saw Howie and all them, they're all mates. And, you know, at the time I didn't even know them. You know, there were some great performances in there as well. Kozluk was fantastic, one off the line. When I think the guy went round me just at 1-0, and Bobby obviously making tackles and blocks, but we were under it. We were absolutely under it. I mean, we did well. We had a few opportunities, but, you know, our back four were under pressure most of the game. It felt like that.
Oh, absolutely. It felt like that in the stand as well. But we went into another Premier League giant in the FA Cup at Oakwell in Chelsea, and that felt a lot less frantic than Anfield. Does that bring a different kind of pressure to a goalie when it's not as frantic as that Anfield game was?
No, the pressure was there against Chelsea. I mean, honestly, I don't think I remember many good saves I made. I didn't make any good saves. But the feeling of you're playing Chelsea, obviously it was 0-0 for a lot of the game. I think we scored in 60-ish or 70-ish, can't remember. But before and just after the goal and the whole game, you're feeling like they're going to do something special. They're about to turn it on, and they never really did. You know, they got close, but that day, the credit all goes to, you know, the lads. they defended so well. I've watched that game back. So I used to have the DVD of that game, and I've watched it back. And there's been, I've not played in the game where the back four's played as well. Bobby, I always said, that was one of his best games, but it really was. But that one, I celebrated. I stayed on the pitch, and everybody was like lifting all the players up, and one lad had me by the neck. But I think because we'd beaten Liverpool, it was like, you've had your amazing cup result. I don't think you can do it twice. So I was thinking, enjoy this one, whatever, and go for it. But I don't think many people thought we could do it twice. And, it just turns out you can. And it was a poor pitch, the pitch helped us because it was quite bobbly and they couldn't really pass very well. And, we beat Chelsea. So happy days, we were into the next round.
And I always imagine for a goalkeeper, those last few minutes feel a lot longer than an outfield player who can get involved for a little bit. How were those last 3 minutes just waiting for the final whistle?
Oh, just painful, very, very painful. I mean, sometimes I think it's weird because in those games, I sometimes think, well, we're winning now. Obviously, Liverpool, you don't have time, but the Chelsea game, I would have been thinking, we're winning now. You cannot concede 2 goals. So I was thinking you can get a replay out of this, and that wouldn't be a bad result. And people might think that's a negative way of thinking, but that was just the way I was thinking. So I kind of I've always tried to give myself a positive out of every position you're in. Try and find that. So I was thinking, right, don't put yourself under too much pressure here because they score on 90 minutes, then it's unlikely they're going to score again. So just, 1 goal. So, I think like that. You try and not look at the clock. And then when that whistle blew, I was just absolutely ecstatic. I remember Fozzie picking me up while I picked him up. And then, it was brilliant. It was just such a great moment.
And did that feel like you'd really arrived in that Barnsley dressing room at that point? Did you feel like one of the team properly?
Yeah, I felt like if it was going to get remembered, the Liverpool game, but now it was going to get remembered throughout the FA Cup to get to the semi-final. Like a semi-final is huge. Out of how many teams I don't know play start in the FA Cup, to get down to the last 4, it was like business. I always loved to watch Man U in the FA Cup semi-finals and Arsenal and all those famous games. And we were in a semi-final, and I just felt that I'd achieved something, I'd achieved something. And I was 23, but I felt like I'd achieved something. It was crazy that I'd just gone in, but, it was brilliant that we got to a semi-final. I remember Simon Davies said, I think it was the Friday, so the day before the game, or the Monday, Tuesday, I can't remember what day we played on, actually. It was midweek. But he said, and it was weird for him to say this because it was kind of like positive, but he said, nobody here has got to a semi-final. Or he said, no, I've never got to a semi-final, so it'd be lovely if we could get to one. And that kind of made it a bit real that we could beat them. And I always remember that thinking, did he say that a bit like jokingly, like, come on, we can beat these and we can get to a semi-final? But, it worked. I think Cosy had been in the semi-final and let us all know that. But, yeah, it was great.
And then unimaginable to Barnsley fans at the time, we thought we'd lost you back to West Brom at one stage before that semi-final. What caused the transfer to go dead for a couple of days? And was your heart set on making that move to Barnsley happen?
Yeah, well, what happened is, so I had a contract about 1.5 years left at West Brom. So West Brom said to me, yeah, you can go. And where they were saying you could go for free, but then because I was, doing quite well and I played in the league as well, and they were in the Championship at the time, they were saying, yeah, you can go, but the money that you've got on your contract, we're not giving you any. But basically, Barnsley offered me a contract, what they said that was their best contract, and it was terrible. It was absolutely appalling look at comparing the 2 contracts. So I was like, right, okay. So then it was basically a game of me stalling it, saying, right, okay, well, West Brom, can you match some of this money that I'm going to lose out on? Because I'm only going to, I'm going to be on X amount next year. So I was playing the game, Ben. I had a very good agent. I've still got the agent at the time. And he said, look, what do you want to do? And I said to him, Paul, I'll go today. I said, I'll sign today. I don't care about this money. I just want to play at Wembley. And he says, right, okay. He says, but just follow what I say. You can't just sign straight away because, there's a lot of money you'll lose out on. So then he taught me about that. So I had to go in the room with West Brom and say, look, you've got to help me out here and make up some of the money. So in the end, I got all 3 parties to Barnsley paid me a little bit more. West Brom paid me the same, and I lost the same. So basically, if I was losing that much, I basically took 66.6 recurring and lost 33.3 recurring, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like, it's just it was playing the game. So if I was always going to sign, there was no chance I was not going to play, because if it was the last hour of the window and it wasn't going to happen, I would sign, and that was always my plan. But I had to play the game, and I didn't really understand the game until then. But you know, you've got to sometimes, and that was the way it was. And they both crumbled, to be fair, Barnsley and West Brom, because Barnsley wanted me, West Brom didn't want me. So, you know, it was an interest for all of them. So I learned a little bit there.
Makes total sense to me. So once we'd sorted out the transfer, Wembley was calling, a semi-final against Cardiff. A massive whirlwind for you in terms of 3 months from where you were to where you were going to be playing that day. How did it feel playing in a FA Cup semi-final at Wembley?
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I do regret the way I was feeling that day. I think a lot of us did. We let the nerves, we did feel nervous. I mean, I think the lad played really well on the day, but, and Cardiff played quite well and were probably just better than us, not by a lot, but we created some chances. But I weren't happy with myself that day, Ben, at all. I was too nervous. I made it into too much of a gladiator arena in my head, and I just, I just weren't that happy. I didn't kick well at all on the day. I think I made a couple of good saves. I can't do anything about the goal because it was ridiculous. But I don't know. I weren't happy with how I felt. I didn't enjoy it as much. People were saying, "Oh, you've got to enjoy it." I didn't really enjoy it because the actual game was so tense. It was so nerve-wracking. It was cold in there. And I remember thinking, it's like, was it April we played there or March? It felt cold, and I just never snapped out of it. And before the game, the kit man, Swifty, the idiot, he come to me just before the game and said, "Oh, you're wearing white and white today." And I went, "What do you mean?" He says, "Like, you're wearing white socks, white shorts." And I just remember losing my head for a minute. And I lost my head. I said, "What do you mean? I never, ever wear that. I've not worn that since I've been here." I said, "I wear black and black," I think it was. And he says, "Yeah, I know, but they're wearing so-and-so, so you've got to change." And he said, and I just lost my head. And I was like, I was cursing a little bit. And I was thinking, I've got to snap out of this because that's annoyed me. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good. And I learned so much because since then, that's happened lots before, lots since. And I've always took those lessons on board, thinking you can't, anything that happens just before, if the kit man forgets your boots, your gloves, anything which has happened, doesn't matter, because you've got to play the game. And I'm not saying that affected the way I played, because I don't think it did, but my mentality wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. And then, they scored a really good goal. Coyote missed a really big chance. And after the game, I think it's still the only game I've cried after a professional game. I think it's the only game because I sat on the pitch and cried, and then I had to do a drugs test. And I really cried in there. I was and I couldn't go in the changing room or anything. I was in the drugs testing place, and I had to in there, and I was really crying because just the occasion was so big. And I'd gone through this journey after over a few months, and all of a sudden I'd lost this massive game in front of 84,000. But looking back now, it was tremendous. My granddad was there, my nan. I had so many tickets to get for. It's class, absolutely brilliant. I've not played at Wembley since, so what a good decision I did sign from. So
And just one more on that FA Cup semi-final. As a goalkeeper standing 60, 70 yards away, what does that Odegaye chance look like as it happens? It looked like he had so much time. It looked like he could go either way, but he obviously made a decision. Enkelman stood up well, and he hit the side net, and it makes me feel sick thinking about it. But I always kept thinking of the scenario, what if, and things like that. But then you move on because you've got lots of seasons ahead of you. But yeah, it was a near miss. And the keeper that neither of us could get was Tony Warner.
That's it, Tony Warner. Sorry, Tony. Please don't ever watch this.
That first full season at Oakwell, so we leave the FA Cup semi behind. You had to really battle for the number 1 shirt with Heinz Muller. Was that a competitive relationship, and how did he compare to other keepers that you'd had to fight with in the past?
Yeah, it was weird because I was thinking that, because when I read the questions briefly, that was the only one I was really thinking about. But the next season, I'd started off as number 1. He was still injured, and I hadn't played too bad. I don't think the results were that great, but I played quite well, and I'd got man of the match at a game against Derby. I think we beat them 2-0 at home, and I got man of the match, and I played really well. And then I played one more game at Birmingham, we lost, and then the next game I think I was dropped. And it annoyed me because looking back now, I was probably, a bit young, naive. I think the plan was to put him in the whole time, which I probably didn't realise. But that season, honestly, I think I played 7 or 8 games. Then he was in, and we were heading for relegation. But that's when I knew I could play Championship football, and I had the belief, I had everything. I just weren't playing, and I lost my head. And I worked harder that season than I've ever worked since. Not saying that I've underworked any of the seasons since then or before, but I remember I was in beast mode all the time. Heinz was a big lad. He looked the part. He had the 6-pack, the pecs and everything. He loved himself a little bit. But I remember at training, I worked my absolute nuts off. And I remember on hard pitches, indoors and everything. And I just literally was in the zone, and it was weird because I was chomping to play. I was gutted I weren't playing, and I didn't think that Heinz was better than me, or like I knew that he wasn't better than me. But looking back now, I didn't realise they were trying to sell him and move him on because they thought they could get a lot of money. I'm not saying that's the whole reason he played, but I think it was Christmas time and we'd gone out, and Heinz told me himself, he says, "You should be playing." And I remember, I never forget that either, because I think you can believe it yourself. And then I think we'd had a few drinks as our Christmas do, and Heinz Müller being in. We weren't that close, he was quite a different lad to myself, but nice enough. Didn't fall out of him, got on with him, fair enough. But it was kind of, he said to me, I remember we'd had a few drinks and stuff like that, and he said to me, "Oh, you should be playing." And I think he'd made a few mistakes. And I think what happened with him is the season before, he was that good. He was fantastic, apparently. I'd seen the highlights, and he was big German. He was, huge, and he was saving penalties. And I've seen the highlights, and he was absolutely class. But he'd had an injury, a really bad injury, and I don't think he came back as good. And maybe I'm getting that wrong because I didn't personally see him, but that's what I really think happened. And he was making mistakes, and I was watching the games thinking, surely I should be getting a chance. And then, he did mention that to me, Heinz, and I remember having that chat and just thinking, that's motivated me even more. And then, to be fair to him, Simon Davey put me in with about 4 or 5 games to go, out of the blue. I thought, I'll just move on from here. I'll go and find another club. I'll play anywhere now. I just want to go and play. And, out of the blue, he put me in at Reading, ironically. We played at Reading away and we drew 0-0. And he said, "Look, you're back in." We drew 0-0. And then I think we drew with Plymouth or Wolves or something like that. And then we drew with Coventry, and then we beat Plymouth last day of the season to stay up. And that was, a tough test for me because I've been out a long time, but, got myself back in, done the business, and, we stayed up, which was a really, really good day.
And that leads nicely on to the following season, which was your first at a permanent club where you were the outright number one for the whole season. So you played anything up, I think it was upwards of 40 games that year. How did it feel to be fully cemented as a number one at a permanent team?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant, Ben. I remember doing all the media that year and saying, this is what I've always wanted, to be part of a team, not like on loan, not a bit part player like at the end of the season. I just wanted to establish myself as a number one. Obviously, we stayed up, and I think I did a good job, but it was my first proper season where, like you said, I played 40 plus games, FA Cup, Carling Cup. It was great. I really felt like I wanted to then give back to Barnsley, or give to Barnsley everything I had. I just wanted to get involved in everything, like whether it was in the community, the charity stuff we did. I remember just wanting to have my say in things and just really giving them everything I had. Obviously, I lived in Barnsley, 20 seconds from the ground, and just gave everything to the club.
And also that season, the manager that convinced you to sign, Simon Davey, left, and Mark Robins joined. What was that change like for you and the squads?
Yeah, it was. It was the first time I'd really noticed. I've seen a manager change. It was strange at first. Got a new goalkeeper coach in Simon Tracy, but no, I think Mark Robins was or was my favourite manager at the club over the time. I think he was calm. He spoke to players in the right way. I had a really good goalkeeper coach, which is important to me. I think I then had a ever present. I think the year after that, I think while he was manager, I'm not sure. And I felt like Barnsley had invested a little bit of money where they'd bought some good players and they'd spent a bit of money on people. And, I think we stayed up comfortably. I think I'm right in saying, I think we comfortably stayed up. And I just felt like we were going somewhere. It was great. It was really good, Mark Robins. I still, every now and again, I stay in contact with him. And whenever I see him, I speak to him on a level, but he was brilliant.
Those seasons in the Robins, they were almost unspectacular, but we were arguably at our most solid as a championship team. We weren't at any threat of relegation. We were a really solid side. Did it feel like Mark was building something, and were you and the team surprised when he left?
Yeah, I thought he was building something, definitely. Not saying that they were the right players because we had all sorts of ages, but he was certainly bringing in a better quality player. And, we stayed in the league comfortably, like you said. And I did start to feel like we were chasing the top six rather than looking down. And it was frustrating for him to leave. That was the only decision I think the club made that really frustrated me. It didn't, not to the point where I'd say anything, or who was I to say anything. I'm just a player. But I remember thinking, that's a shame, because he'd started something really good and I got on with him, and I just felt like he was going to build something to have a few pushes for playoffs at least.
It was then a bit of a change when Robins left in many ways, that Keith Hill came in, different style, different personality to Robins from as an outsider looking in. What impact did Keith Hill have when he came in, and what did he change that summer?
Well, I think he got a lot of his old players in, didn't he, with Perkins and Jimmy McNulty. So he got some really good, solid lads, Dawson, and mentally he got some really class lads. And yeah, he was totally different. He was loud, aggressive. I mean, he had a lad, Vaz Tay. The way he used to speak to Vaz Tay was comical. I mean, it was brilliant. Like, he put a rocket up his arse. He was onto him all the time. He'd take no prisoners. Everybody would be on a level playing field, which I really liked. The intensity was there, really, really good. And I think from going from Robins to leaving and then having Keith Hill come in, where I'd thought over the summer, I'm gutted he'd gone. And then all of a sudden something new was there and everybody was energetic. We got a few good loan players. Obviously, Vaz signed on £500 a week, I think it was. And, what he got out of him, Craig Davis and people like that was class. And I think we really, again, I think near Christmas, I think we played Ipswich. It's hard to say this is a fact, but I think we played Ipswich on the telly, and that would have put us in 5th or 4th position. And we ended up going 2-0 up and we lost. And I always think that was the time. We beat Leeds away, I think it was. But no, we did quite well up until Christmas. And then after that, sort of hit a brick wall because we got rid of all the players. Vaz went to West Ham, but I think Butterfield left that year, was it?
He got injured again. He got injured in that Leeds game. So Michael Brown took him out. Vaz Tay came off the bench and scored a hat-trick.
Yeah, and Drinkwater left, didn't he?
Drinkwater got bought by Leicester because he just got man of the match against Leicester, so they just bought him.
Yeah, that's it. So I think we beat Leicester that year away.
Yeah, because there was a point in that season where we had Butterfield, Davis, Vaz Tay, yourself, Drinkwater. Everyone was firing. We looked like a really good side, and then we lost those players in January. How hard is it being in goal, just watching the team in front of you just kind of get dismantled mid-season?
Really difficult, because not difficult to play in, but obviously to keep up the results. If you're a team who scores goals, which we did that year, I think we scored goals. We put 5 pass leads. If you take that away, it's difficult, because then you're going at half time 0-0 a lot of the time. Or I was gutted. I was really gutted. I remember I was speaking to every player who left over the years. Every single player who was rumoured to go, I'd always sit down with them, get that straight face on, which I know I can do at the right times. And I'd say, look, I know you've been offered. I said, but what about you stay? We go for promotion. I'll give you a little tickle of my wages. And, in the summer you can leave. And they'd always burst out laughing and say, no, you're chatting crap. Do you know what I mean? And all that. And I'd always have a go, but I just knew, I just wanted it. I was selfish. I wanted them to stay. I wanted us to I said, go in the summer. I said, don't go in January, go in the summer. I said to Vaz, I said, don't go in the summer, in January, go in the summer. Just stay with us. We can do this, blah, blah, blah. And he was a lovely lad. And he was like, yeah, but Steele, I've been offered this good contract and I've had this knee problem and blah, blah, blah. And I knew deep down, if he asked me seriously, I'd say, yeah, I can't blame you for going and things like that. But I just always had a little go just in case. And yeah, you never know what can happen. But, they left and that was it.
So another change of manager came then, but this time it was a familiar one as Flicker replaced Hill. Results have been pretty woeful for a few months, but was the squad surprised when Keith left?
When Keith Hill left, we'd been poor. I don't think we'd got the results. We hadn't got the luck, and we'd had the season before. We'd had some really good results at places. We'd not got the results at all. Can't put my finger on it. I remember it being a period where I just thought, don't know why we keep losing. I don't know why we can't pick up results. And I think he'd made me captain just before that. I can't remember who would have been captain before him, before me. Probably somebody was sold. But yeah, he'd made me captain. He got me in the office, and that was brilliant. I remember thinking, yeah, thanks very much. This is such an honour. Against Burnley, that was it. We drew 1-1 with Burnley. That was the day he made me captain, and we just couldn't get the results. And in the end, they had to sack him. And it was a shame, really, because he was good. He got a lot of that out of a lot of the players, but probably just didn't have that know-how in the Championship. And I don't know why. He just had to, he ended up leaving, and obviously the change to Flitcroft happened.
Well, we know after speaking to Craig Ignett last week that he was lined up for the Barnsley job before we appointed Flicker. But were the squad behind Flicker getting the job full time? Because it felt like Flicker's results and the team he won everybody over, and obviously won the board over as well. Was that the case within the squad, that you knew at a certain point he was definitely going to get the job?
To be honest, no. He said, look, I'm going to take the games in between, but while they find a new manager. But we liked Flicker. He was, the whole time Keith Hill was manager, he was kind of that guy you could talk to. He was really good at speaking and building players up, especially the younger ones, the more vulnerable players on loan and things like that. He was really good at that. His man management skills are first class. And I remember when we won against, I think it was Leeds, they asked me in the press conference, and I was a little bit fired up. And the guy, I don't know who it was, he just said, so who do you think should be next Barnsley manager? And that was it. So I was like always, when somebody asks me a question, I like to try and answer it as honestly as possible. And I just went, David Flitcroft should be the next manager. And they went, oh yeah, blah, 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 all these questions. I said, well, he's good. We know him. He's had good results so far. He's done a really good job. And that was it. And then I think that was in the papers the next day. And I think they found it hard not to give him it, certainly till the end of the season, because, a lot of people thought, they'll go down anyway, maybe fight him, but they'll go down anyway. And, obviously Flicker got the job and the Great Escape started, and, we just bombarded it.
Because we went on this, it was an incredible run. We were beating all the top teams, loads of people that were playoff contenders, some impressive clean sheets from your perspective. What changed, and how did Flicker galvanise a squad that was pretty much losing week in, week out before he took over?
Well, his speciality was being the underdog. Flicker's speciality was that. When everything's against you and things, he somehow, and the way he spoke was fantastic. Even today, I'd say he's one of the best at getting a changing room silent and building them up. And it was like every game was a cup final as well. So he loved that. And he put together this, unit, and we used to stay in the hotel before and sometimes after games, which was really weird for us. And he just threw everything at it. And we, like you said, we as players spoke in the change room a lot. And once the message got passed to each other that, we can do this, this is when we're really, really rock bottom, I think it was. We said, look, so I said, I always believed we could do it. And we were getting results where we were just surprising everybody away at Middlesbrough, and just some weird results and some good draws there. And we were just treating every game like a cup final. And we were class. Every player was brilliant. Even ones came on a sub, and your Kelvin, the two who's Dawson's, Jim O'Brien was absolutely class. And just together, it just all clicked. And I know what you're going to say about all the other teams winning around us. It's true. In the change room, it's heartbreaking. You win, you give everything you've got, you win by one goal, you get in the change room, you see the results in Peterborough and all these teams had won. It was like, oh, I've got to do it all again. And, you'd find the positive in that. And you go, well, at least imagine if we'd lost. I'd always say, well, imagine we'd lost. Imagine that without 3 points, we'd be like back that way. And you'd always try and find the positive in it. And, it was exciting. It went down to the last game of the season. So, credit to all the teams around there. It made it a good spectacle.
And that was definitely my next question. So you answered it perfectly straight away. There was one before we go to Huddersfield away. There was one result that stands out in that kind of last 3 or 4 months of the season. That was that 6-0 defeat at home to Charlton. After giving everything, as you say, we're treating every game like a cup final. We're putting 100% effort in. How do you pick yourself up as a squad after such a trouncing at home or such a bad defeat?
Yeah, I think that was my worst game, actually. I think in a Barnsley shirt, personally, that performance was absolutely terrible. I think the spilled one for the first goal, let a weird one in the second half. It was basically in the change room after, I said the most cliche thing. I said, it's 3 points, whether you lose 1-0 or 8-0, 6-0. And I remember saying it and thinking, I've heard that from so many pros in the past, like so many old players and people like that. And I was just giving every bit of experience, every bit of knowledge I had all season, like especially from Christmas, but everything I could give, I remember giving it. And it was just that. And I remember thinking, if I don't just let that go, because usually I dwell on the game a little bit for a few days. If I don't let that go, that's going to ruin like this great run we're going on. And the next game, I think was Forest away, and we drew 0-0. And I played really well. And I remember thinking, yes, all those lessons that people have told me, don't dwell on it, don't blah, blah, blah. And we got a 0-0 there, which was a good point at the time. So I think they were doing quite well. And, we just got back on it because we thought, it was true. 1-0 or 6-0, it didn't matter. Unless it went down to goal difference, it didn't matter. We got beat. We were crap. We probably expected to win that Charlton game and we didn't. And then I think we got good results straight after it. So that just showed the strength of it. So, we moved on pretty quick.
Our results then mean that we've got this final day relegation decider against Huddersfield. I think Peterborough playing Palace, I think it was. How do we approach that game as a last day of the season, need a result to stay up?
Yeah, it reminded me of the Wembley feeling. You want to win that bad or you want it to go your way. You didn't. We took the approach of, which I absolutely hate. We took the approach of we're not going to worry about the other result at all. We're not even going to look at their result, which I find impossible. I have to know how the other team's getting on in a way, because it kind of like, in your mind, I think it's important to know that. But anyway, that was fine. That was the way we went. So at halftime, we didn't know the result. Nobody would tell me. I was asking the staff and everything. But no, that was a big, big game. Looking back, that was a huge, huge game for Huddersfield as well. I don't think we didn't really realise till after how big a game it was for Huddersfield, because we thought, well, they're pretty much safe. But they weren't. They could easily have gone down that day. So the stoppage time at the end, that was only because Huddersfield just wanted the draw as well. So by that time, both teams knew that Palace had scored against Peterborough. So, Huddersfield played their part as well. And I didn't really think about it, or none of us did at the time, because it was all about us. It was all about us just getting over the line.
And tell us about those last couple of minutes when we essentially played out the draw. I think you had the ball at your feet for over 90 seconds. Who was shouting the instructions to keep hold of it?
Well, I was running like a madman because I think the ball boys are retreated. And I was running around like a madman to get the ball for my goal kicks, because obviously, Huddersfield slowed down and I thought we still needed the win. So I grabbed the ball once, kicked it long, but now watching back, I can see the bench already trying to tell me, but I couldn't hear them. And then another time I ran to get it, turned, and I saw Jim McNulty, and I don't know if it was Stephen Dawson, but I remember Jim McNulty just going like that. And he was halfway down the touchline, the wrong side, and flicker and everything. So I was like, what? And I literally just went into slow-mo mode. I was like, what? And I was like, right, okay. So I needed to trust them at that point, that they were making the right decision. And the whole bench were doing it, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I put the ball down, kicked it long. The ball came back to me after half a minute or so, and I had it at my feet. And then I realised all the Huddersfield players are backwards. Now, when you look back at that, I always think we did the right thing. Like, no question, we did the right thing. You know, it's a bit of a gamble because Peterborough could have scored, but we did the right thing. We'd given everything that season, absolutely everything. I'd never, ever put so much into a season and it gone our way. It was like a cup final. They say never celebrate just beating relegation, but that's rubbish because unless you're down there and get that feeling, you don't know what it's like. But the only thing that annoys me when I was watched that, and I can see why people get annoyed, is a few of the Huddersfield players sat down as if to say, well, he ain't going to kick it. The game's over. Let's sit down. And I thought that was disrespectful, really disrespectful. You know, and I think that if you're watching that game and you see that, I think that's out of order. I don't think what we did was out of order one little bit. I think that if the lads who sat down on the Huddersfield team, they might regret that looking back because, okay, the game probably was over. I wasn't going to kick it. But to sit down and, you know, it looked a little bit Mickey Mouse. But, you know, the final whistle went and we still didn't know. And we had to wait a few minutes to get the other scores. And, you know, lucky enough, we stayed up.
And as a local lad, do you still get stick from Peterborough fans for your part in that game?
No, not really, because I hear little bits like that, but nobody ever says anything to me, ever. I think I've had one guy in Peterborough mention something, so I've asked him, I've gone back and just asked him because I'd like that confrontation, if I'm honest, Ben. I'd like that discussion. And I think he's just like walked away or just, not in a violent way, but I kind of want that, you know, I've never been asked it properly. And, you know, Chinese whispers is remarkable because people say, oh, he was juggling the ball, he was doing headers and things like that. And I wasn't doing anything of the sort. That's not in my nature. And I had the ball at my feet. Nobody was closing me down, so I didn't pick it up. I don't know the exact time I had it at my feet, but, you know, it certainly wasn't what some people might have been saying. So, you know, for us, it was all about Barnsley. Whoever I'm playing for, it's all about that team. And at the time, it was the right thing to do. And, you know, there isn't a player out there who wouldn't have done the same as me, but I don't really get stick from it anyway.
We avoided the drop, so new contracts were handed out to a host of players that summer once we knew what division we were going to play in. And I can see you smiling already about this one. Thankfully, you were one of them, and we got you to sign a 2-year contract. There was one point where Flicker was in the press and you were deemed too old for a 2-year contract. And at the same time, I think Mike Pollitt played a game or two and who was over 40. What happened with that contract? And is that one of the most bizarre comments from a manager about you in the press?
Right, here we go. Right, let me think. Long time ago now. Right, so what had happened is we'd had one of the best seasons ever. Remember, we got to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup as well. So we'd now been in 2 quarterfinals. One we'd won, obviously, and got to Wembley, and another one. We'd stayed up every season. And not that should really even matter. But anyway, so I was up at the end of the season. They weren't given any contracts until they knew which league we're in. And I found out through my agent, who spoke to the club, you know, what the deal was. So they'd offered me a contract, a 1-year contract on the same money that I was on, and which was hurtful at the time because I knew that I was worth more, and because I'd signed some pretty low contracts before that. Not to sound too selfish, but I was being honest, but you know, it was more about the length of contract. So I was like, a 1-year contract, what's that all about? Blah blah blah. I couldn't get my head around it, and then through the press, I think it was our press manager and obviously I'd been at the club a few years, so I'd made friends, and somebody said to me, oh, apparently your manager's come out and said that, and I was like, well, I don't say that. I think he would have got misheard or whatever, things like that. And then he sent me the thing. He did send me the recording of it or whatever, because I don't read press at all, Ben. Like, I haven't done since I joined Barnsley. I think it was that 2008. I just made a conscious effort, never read press. Like, you know, even though it's on a lower scale to say the big Premiership boys, but I just decided not to. It used to, you know, wreck my brain and things like that. So anyway, so then I just came, you know, I just said to the club, no. I said, look, I won't be signing a 1-year contract on the same money. I just said no. I've never rejected a contract before, but I just said no. I said, look, I'm not going to be, and I wasn't happy about it. And I felt very underappreciated. So like from that, I just said to my agent, look, we're going to have to find something else. Just, you know, I can't believe they've done that, because I feel like I deserve more, not in terms of money, but the year thing was really, really important to me. And then, in the end, I think right near the end, they'd gone back to pre-season. They then came back and offered me a 2-year deal on a bit more money, which I signed. But then in my head, it was still there that obviously the manager had said this. This is somebody I'm quite close to as well, and I'm then working with all the time. And it just really stuck in my mind a lot. It was really, when something's just pecking at your brain and you're thinking, hang on a minute, if he's thinking that and he's saying that, surely he doesn't appreciate me as a player. He doesn't, or the club don't value me. The 1-year contract thing, because obviously they said, look, it's 1 year, blah, blah, blah. But Ficker's comment was obviously in my head. So we're in Spain, and I asked him about it. I said, look, let's have a word. I said, just one thing. I said, the press, apparently you said this, blah, blah. He was like, no, it got changed. And, he kind of said that it wasn't really what he said and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of went, all right, okay, at least that's off my shoulders. But it never really left my head. It was in my mind a little bit. I think it was a silly thing to say. It was a very silly thing to say. A goalkeeper at 28, if he did say that, maybe he said it for other reasons. Maybe, you'd have to ask Dave himself. I've seen him since a few times, but, maybe he said it and regretted it. I don't know, but it was just a stupid thing to say because, as we all know, goalkeepers go on longer, but to say he's got to get used to signing 1-year deals it doesn't fill you with confidence. And to be honest, that year, there was a lot of that going on. The lads were saying to me, my contract's rubbish, blah, blah, blah. And we hadn't really had that at Barnsley. It was never an issue, money and things. We knew that we weren't going to get paid one of the best, but you knew when they were taking the mick a little bit. And I can appreciate him pulling the reins, but we just achieved something. We felt like we should get rewarded ever so slightly for something good that we'd done. And we weren't. They were obviously pulling the reins, but, there was a lot of people who went into that season slightly unhappy, even the ones who signed contracts, and it did upset. You don't see it day to day, but looking back, I remember thinking it was the most disrupted a team's been by the contract situation. So it was a little bit damaging. But in my situation, I've signed a 2-year deal in the end. I was happy with it. And obviously played 1 more year there.
And sadly, that momentum that Flicker had built in that kind of every game's a cup final season where we'd stayed up, it didn't continue into the season after. And he was replaced by Premier League legend in our world, Danny Wilson. Why do you think our form didn't carry over to the next season?
I don't know. I don't want to say that the previous answer was the reason, but I just felt like from all that excitement and, staying up, it was some achievement, and it was really good. We never really enjoyed it because I think after that, the offers started coming from the club and things, and everything was descaling. And so rather than kick on, which we all thought it would do, I definitely thought, right, this is the time to kick on. We've got a manager who's done great, players who are at a good age. There were so many good players at a good age who had experience, and we could kick on. And then it kind of got I don't know, it just got disrupted the next year for whatever reason, and we weren't good enough. I don't know why. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. We weren't good enough. I injured myself. My back went, I think, quite soon after the first 5 or 6 games. But I wasn't playing well. I weren't playing well. I know when I'm playing well, and that was a period in my Barnsley career where I just don't know. I don't know if we ever had so much excitement and zap for the seasons before, especially at last season. I just weren't playing well. I didn't, we weren't getting on as a team. We weren't picking up results. So I think, it was sad because then we got ourselves in a lot of trouble by January.
And I'm conscious of time, but we there's a few things we want to talk about before we let you go. You left Oakhall that summer. Was it always on the cards that you were going to leave if we were relegated, or was there ever the chance that you were going to stay?
No, it wasn't. But I think for some reason I'd lost something. I didn't feel like. I think I took it to heart that how I was playing in that last season. It's only the start, because when I came back and at the end, I think I was playing really well again, and I picked up, and I thought we were going to escape relegation. I just, for some reason, I felt like I needed something different, and there was we got relegated, which was heartbreaking. I must mention that Patrick Crine sent me the most loveliest message after that Middlesbrough game, saying how he said he was praising me for the way I played that day, but he just said, look, really, heartwarming thing. And he weren't a man of many words to the players, but he texted me, which was really unusual. And I remember having it for years after, and I lost it on one of my phones. I was devastated, but he texted me something really lovely. So I really appreciated that from him. That was a really special moment, because I didn't realise how much he appreciated my hard work, and he put it all in one message. And sometimes I think that those things need to be said, especially not just in football, in life. You need to tell people how you feel and think, and in sport it can be so emotional. Sometimes the top guy texted me like that, it went so far, it was amazing. So if his family ever watched this, then, you know, or Barnsley fans even, it was just so emotional for me getting that from the club owner, and knowing that he appreciated what I did. So I just wanted to say that. But no, I obviously, you know, got to the end of the season, and I'd gone away, had come back, and I'd had this offer from, you know, Panathinaikos, who come out of the blue. And I said, I would love to play abroad. And it just sort of happened overnight, really. It was very similar to the Barnsley thing, to be honest.
Really appreciate you sharing that Patrick Crime moment. Panathinaikos is what we want to talk about next before we let you go, really. What attracted you to Greece? How culturally different was it? How did you settle in?
Yeah, it was like I said, I got an offer one night. They said, come and do a medical. I flew over, thinking I'd go and look at the place, but I ended up staying for 2 days. Sorry, I'd met the director in London. He flew down. They meet you face to face. Everything was different from the first word. They talk about meeting you eye to eye. It's a Greek thing. You know, they've done it with all the players they signed. They were telling me they've never signed an English player. So I flew out there, did a medical, and sorted a contract. And I ended up staying, training that night up there. So it was really strange, but you know, it was something that I really wanted to do. I was in the deep end. You know, we were going for Champions League in our first season. I had to earn my stripes. I had to get in the team, which thankfully I did after about 3 or 4 games. And, you know, when I got my chance, I took it, and everything was new. It was crazy, Ben. Obviously, the fan situation was different. The intensity of it, the speed of the game is different. Sometimes faster, sometimes a lot slower. And then, you know, I was lucky enough to play, I think, 15 times in Europa League, which was really special for me, because, you know, I didn't really see myself doing that in England, because I'd have to be, you know, probably an Everton or a Tottenham, which I didn't see myself doing. So for me to move, it was for those reasons, and it was a fantastic experience.
And I think it was against Ajax that you got player of the round for the UEFA Europa League, similar to what you got with Barnsley when you played at Anfield.
Yeah, that was a special day. I saved a penalty actually, and they scored the rebound. But Van der Sar was there. I think he's their sporting director or their chairman or something. He was there that day actually, and I think I'd played the season before in Europa League, but that was one of, you know, a very memorable moment. You know, I did play my first Europa League game in the October or November against PSV, which was just surreal, because I just got in the team, and one of the first games was PSV away. And people kept asking me, you know, you gone from Championship football to Europa League, and it was another Liverpool Reading away for Peterborough. It was one of those things. Am I ready? Am I good enough? And, you know, we drew the game 1-1. It was a really good night. It was one of the most special moments. My dad flew over from Amsterdam to Eindhoven, sorry. And, you know, it just sort of clicked and it worked. And I wanted to do what I did with Barnsley, give everything I had to this new club and this new culture. So I kind of just moved my life there and just threw myself into it.
And last question on your time in Greece. Is the derby of the eternal enemies, as they call it, is that as intense as it looks?
Oh, it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal because you mix danger with excitement and football together. It's just that it's on the edge all the time. And this game, it gets built up. They say it gets built up from the moment the fixtures come out, but you actually hear about it, see it, the fans. I had a doctor. I'll tell you a true story. I had a doctor doing my medical, and he didn't speak a word to me the whole time. Grumpy Greek guy, blah blah blah. Thought this guy hates me or can't speak English. He was checking my heart and everything. And the last thing he said to me, he went, "Steele." They always call me Steele, and he says, I won't swear, but he said F-U-C-K Olympiakos, which is the first time I thought, what? He hadn't said a word, but he just said that to me, and that was their way of saying, you can lose every game, but as long as you beat them or do well against them, that's all that mattered. And I was lucky to play in quite a few derbies, and one of them didn't even go ahead. It got to the warm up, and it was a riot, and it didn't even go ahead. But that's another story. But it was just a crazy match, and I'd love to go and watch one as a spectator in the future one time.
And then you made the move back to England. Was I know you went to Bristol City, but was a return to Oakwell ever on the cards? Or
I think they mentioned it to me in that when I left Panathinaikos, and I just felt that it wasn't quite right. I'd had 3 years away, but I just wanted to come back and maybe try something different. So it wasn't quite right. I can't remember what league they were in. I don't know if it was Championship or League One that year, but I just didn't feel like it was right. And that was only early talks, to be honest. And I kind of just told them really straight. I just said, look, I've got another opportunity that I'd like to try out, and I went to Bristol City.
And the home stretch questions. So we've only got 3 more. Best back four you've ever played with? 2 fullbacks and two centre halves.
Oh, I should have written this down. This is sort of preparation I need to do. Right. I'm going to give you a Barnsley back four rather than the best back four, because I can't think. I played that so many players. It's ridiculous. But right, I'm going to go for Stephen Foster. Can rely on him. Love playing with him. Fantastic guy. I'm going to go for. I'm going to miss so many players out here because I can't even remember. John Stones as centre back as well. I'm going to put him in centre back, even though he played right back a lot. But I'm cheating here because I would like. It's to be fair, Cozzy was a fantastic right back, but for Bobby's game against Chelsea alone, he has to go in there. Bobby was. Tell you what about Bobby, just quickly. I know I chat on a lot tonight. Bobby was such a good football player. He was such a good footballer. I think in the later years, Bobby was there. He should have played a lot more. Whether it was midfield or right back, he was such a good football player. He wasn't just tough and made challenge. He did that, but he was such a clever player. In the midfield, I quite liked him. And he never played enough at the end of his Barnsley career, and should have maybe played on a few more years. Should have just, moved somewhere else if it wasn't working. But he was a really good footballing brain. So I put Bobby at right back, Bobby, Stones, Foster, and left back. Can you help me out? Give me some left backs. I'm trying to think.
You could chuck Cozzy in at left back if you wanted to.
Yeah, could do.
Obviously, you don't.
I'm looking for players who bomb on, things like that. I'm trying to think of other left backs I've played with and things like that. I'll tell you what. I'll put a Bristol one, Joe Bryan, because he scored the goal against Man United at Bristol City. Joe Bryan, fantastic player, plays for Fulham now. Really good guy. Yeah, he's my sort of left back.
And then just a question on penalties, because we can't not ask you it, but how did you save all those penalties? I mean, you mentioned one for Panathinaikos earlier. You seem to save them all the time.
I don't know. Do you know what? When I first joined Barnsley, I like to think of the negatives, don't I? But I was terrible at penalties. And I remember conceding a few. I think I'd not saved one for Coventry when I was first at Coventry at 1920. And I started Barnsley career and I was crap. And I couldn't get near one. I was trying to, just watch the ball and follow it. And I thought, this isn't working. And then I had another technique, which, seemed to work for me. I used to study the player a little bit, and just really believe it was all a mental thing. I'd believe, I'd say it. I'm saving this penalty. That's it. I'm going to save it. I'm going to palm it out there. We're going to go at the other end and score, and I just started this mind sort of control. And then, it just kind of works. Once you save a few, your confidence gets up. And then goalkeeper coaches would sometimes write down where they've been in the previous time. So I'd study it before and I'd say, I'd make a pattern. But once I decided that was it, I was going. And, I think the Ian Hart one, I don't even think I had my eyes open. I saved one against Ian Hart at Reading. I think I had my eyes shut and it just hit me in the hand because I just went. Is
that the game you saved too?
Yes, yeah. It is. So, I just had a technique and that was it really. I saved one against Olympiacos actually, where away in my first Eternal Derby game, we lost 1-0 actually, but 1-0 I saved a penalty there and did the same, just looked the guy up before, studied him, is that Midglue or something, and then, just went with it, just be confident, believe you're going to save him, the pressure's off really, but I enjoyed it, really enjoyed it.
Now, I'm not wishing your career away here, because I know you've got a few years left. But are you going to continue in football when your career comes to an end, or have you got other ideas?
I don't know really. I've got a company, Youth Dreams Project, been going for 6 years now in Peterborough. That works in a lot of schools. Does a lot of things to do with sport within the city, PE lessons and exclusion lessons, loads of things like that. But YDP is really grown fast. So I kind of like the business side of life. I kind of think I'll be good at that. I'm not sure about I don't think managing or coaching is for me, Ben, to be honest. I think sporting director role or something like that might be better, but not a manager and not a coach at the moment. Although I spoke to Martin Devaney this week and he said I should do my badges, which I kind of have done on the sneak. But yeah, he said leave your options open, so I might listen to him.
What about a Soccer Saturday pundit? Because you've done quite good at this.
I said to you before, I never say yes to doing things like this, but nah, not really. Not really. I don't want to just follow the normal trail that people want you to go down. I don't know. I just want to be doing my own thing. But like I said, I've not finished. I feel good. I think I've got another 5 years in me at least. But it's only here. I don't think it's physically. Touch wood, I don't get injuries. I just think it's if you want to keep playing as a player, it's all mental battle. My dream is before I go. My dream. I've always had this image of playing a game, not necessarily me playing, but organising a match between Barnsley and Panathinaikos. Because obviously Barnsley, I was there for 7, 8 years, whatever it was, and Panathinaikos was my second. I was there for 3 years, and I nearly played like 100 games or so. But those two clubs are really special to me, and I always imagined them playing a game in pre-season or something, and the whole stadium packed. The Greek fans just letting off flares and flags and everything like that. The Barnsley fans just going mental as well, and just having it as a big every year maybe, and like joining the clubs together. They do that abroad a lot. I'd love to have a Panathinaikos Barnsley game, organise it. I don't know whether I could play in it. So I'd love to play in it, obviously, but somehow if I could organise that, because there's a lot of Greeks in London and around the UK. I'm told there's thousands. I always get Greek messages from people who live in the UK, which is great. I'd love to see the two teams sort of play against each other and have a link of some sort, because it's such a random kind of, people always ask me Barnsley to Athens, but like for them to meet and play, whether it could be in Athens or in London or in Barnsley, that would be great. So that's my dream. That's what I want to organise.
Well, us Barnsley fans love an away day, and we love to travel. So let's make it happen in Greece.
Yeah, maybe at the Olympic Stadium, 60,000. That'd be class. That'd be immense.
We'll fill it. Well, look, that's a lot from live from Redfearn's Bar with Luke Steele. Some amazing memories there, and really open and honest. So thanks a million, mate.
No worries. It's been really good.
Final words from us to remind you that we've got former Barnsley manager and 2-time European Cup winner Viv Anderson joining us after the weekend on Tuesday night. That's a 7 p.m. kickoff. We're also working on having the man in the dugout from that penalty shootout win over Swansea at the Millennium Stadium, Andy Ritchie, with us this time next week. So keep an eye out for that one as we confirm it. He might also have a special guest with him, so an extra carrot being dangled there. So keep your eyes peeled. Luke, thanks again, mate. Really appreciated.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Stay safe, everyone, and have a brilliant weekend.